Hi everybody, I'm Luke Hector and this is the Broken Meeple, the review channel for board games that tells an honest opinion regardless of the repercussions that might ensue. We'll get on with the episode in just a moment, but first I need to say a quick word from the sponsor. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, Kiender.co.uk. Kiender stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to Kiender and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
Twilight Inscription, whew. When I heard about it, I did roll my eyes a little bit. I mean, roll and write genres are getting, bloated as all get out these days. It's like, there's only so much more you can do with it. What more could you possibly do? Well, you could take one of the largest games of all time, Twilight Imperium, and turn it into a 2-hour roll and write. Yes, possibly the longest roll and write game that is in existence, which I think is only partially made up by Roman Roll. I think that's the closest thing, and Hadrian's Wall. This is like literally a very tiny subgenre of very lengthy, very complex roll and writes. So I thought, how on earth are you going to take a 6-hour epic monstrosity like that, Twilight Imperium, and turn it into a roll and write? Surely there's too much to go by. Well, there's certainly a lot to go by, that's saying something.
That's putting it mildly, 007.
So in Twilight Inscription, you are playing through a series of rounds. Each round is preceded by an event, most of which are strategy events, which is where the meat of the game happens and you get to do a lot on your sheet. The other events, Production, War, and Council, involve some kind of little side things that take place every now and again, alternating in between the strategy events. With Production, you gain trade goods. With Council, you get to vote on various agendas that pop up during the game. And with Warfare, you essentially, a bit like in Seven Wonders, you fight your two neighbours based on your Warfare sheet, and if you win or lose, you might lose a point, but you might gain some bonus either way. Now, with the strategy events, which is where most stuff happens, you will have the opportunity to spend resources from the card and also from these dice. Some are black that you always get to use, some are focus dice, which you have to unlock in order to be able to access from your sheets. But you will essentially, and this is going to require a fair bit of space, so you know what, why don't we put this box down on the floor so I can deal with this. You essentially will have the 4 sheets in front of you: Industry, Expansion, Warfare, Navigation, whichever order you want to put it in. And so what will happen is I spend the resources and I have to choose an active sheet. So one of these 4 is what I'm going to focus on this round. I might choose Navigation, for example. I want to go explore some planets. So I spend the resources from the card, and each sheet has a different way that you can spend the resources from the dice in order to do various actions on the sheet. Once you've spent them, you then roll these dice, and then from these dice you spend the resources on those on the same sheet. The idea being that you can only directly influence the sheet you're on, but you may spend assets from other sheets in order to facilitate actions on said sheet. So I might have unlocked something on the industry sheet, which gives me something cool on navigation. I've picked navigation as my active sheet, so I could spend my asset over here and do something cool over here. And this will happen every strategy event. So that is when you're going to do the vast meat of the game. All your strategic planning decisions is mainly going to happen from the strategy events, whereas the other 3 are mostly just almost like a separate phase that just happens. The war phase is essentially dictated by how much war units you have deployed on both sides of a grid, a sort of join the dots grid, and you just check your 2 neighbours. Production is literally just how much you've crossed off, get that many trade goods, and they're effectively a wild resource. The council phase is a little bit more involved. You essentially have 3 of these agendas that will happen each game. You shuffle and deal 1 randomly for the game. They have a pass or fail thing on there, and basically what will happen is you will have accumulated votes based on stuff you've done on your industry sheet, and so what you'll do is that you'll tally up the votes and you'll in secret go, you know what, I don't really want that fail effect to happen because that could scupper my warfare a bit. You know what, I'm going to cross off 5 votes for fail. I don't want that to pass. And then we simultaneously reveal, and then whoever has the most, whichever has the most votes, pass or fail, will be the agenda that passes through. But then some of them also give a benefit to whoever put the most votes through in the first place. And that's essentially pretty much the game. If I try to explain in detail what happens on each sheet, we'll be here until next week. It's not going to happen. But to sort of summarize very briefly, expansion is very much about rows and columns. And that's kind of what this game is. It's basically a collection of mini games. So expansion is about crossing off icons to make rows and columns, and when you complete a row or column on various planets, you get to gain rewards, but you have to unlock the planets using navigation first. Navigation allows you to go across all the known space, circling planets to say you've claimed them, and these can get you points or symbols or assets, but most of what it will do is allow you to expand further on this one. Industry is kind of a noughts and crosses tic-tac-toe grid. You have a grid of commodities that you can unlock, but essentially what happens is that you can only claim a spot if it's next to a spot you've scrapped. So you essentially have to do cross for a scrap, naught for a claim, and you have to use this kind of alternating noughts and crosses fashion across the grid to claim as much as you can while being efficient with the stuff that you scrap. On top of that, it's also where you get your trade goods and your various votes for having commodities. The warfare is, as I said, a kind of join the dots thing. You have a grid split into two halves, the right neighbour and the left neighbour. When you build a unit, you essentially draw the pattern that's on here dots-wise, and as long as it's adjacent to another unit, or the deployment line as it's referred to, then it's valid and it will count towards the warfare. There's bonuses that you can achieve on there, and as each war event happens, the deployment line moves up, and the rewards get a little bit better, and you start having to kind of move forward down the line. But that's essentially a summary of how the 4 sheets work. You'll go through all the events. There'll eventually be a final war that ends the game. You total up all the victory points across your sheets and any objectives that you might have done, of which you have a few that will come into play each game, and of course the one with the most.
Of course!
So the first thing you're going to notice for your 50-60 quid that you're going to spend on this game is, oh my word, I hope you like saturated colours. This is, if you like colour, this is your wet dream basically. I mean, it is just blinding you with the amount of colour it is. You know, it's every time you put this on the board, particularly if you use an Instagram filter or if you have loads of these laid out. But it does look quite pretty as a result. I mean, if you compare this to something like Hadrian's Wall, for example, that one looks a lot more dull on the sheet, whereas this one at least is a lot of nice, bright, pretty colours. All these sheets are dry erase, so you have dry erase orange markers, which you can clearly see what you've done on each sheet, although the markers are a little hit and miss. Pen-wise, they work quite well. I had no trouble circling stuff or writing with them or them having ink, but the erasers on them are a bit, well, crap. So, I mean, it advises you in the rulebook to rub out all the stuff you do with a paper towel. Do not, ignore that. You must do it, because honestly, even after barely touching the thing, you know, the picture on the screen now is literally what I did after a few corrections. You know, it just ended up being bright orange with the eraser and residue everywhere. You do not want to use these erasers on these pens unless you're doing very minor corrections. Otherwise, stick to the paper towels. You get really good artwork on the cards, although most of the artwork is essentially some event cards and the faction cards that you can be. The dice are really good quality, chunky, solid, clearly legible iconography. The color ones in particular have got you can kind of see inside the little bit in the middle. Although my friend had some promo dice which had dark icons and they were faded dice. They were rubbish. You couldn't read the icons on them to save your life, but these ones that you get in the backs, much better. The ones with white icons. This is how you do big chunky dice. I mean, they're one step away from the seasoned dice, and we know what I think of the seasoned dice, right, lads?
Did you see anything? No, sir. I didn't see you playing with your dolls again. Good!
Now, you're probably looking at this and going, oh my god, Space Spreadsheet the game. How on earth am I going to learn this? Well, I had a similar thing when I played Hadrian's Wall. I thought, how on earth am I supposed to play this? And it took me a little while to get used to Hadrian's Wall. This one, not as bad as you think. And there's 2 reasons for that. Firstly, a lot of the iconography sort of kind of makes sense, but it's more that the rules are written pretty well. I mean, I barely had to check this rulebook for anything after I tried it once. And honestly, there's not even a huge amount of rules in here. Most of what you're doing is trying to figure out how to, keep track of everything. That's the hardest part of this game. But the actual rules themselves are mostly fairly straightforward, and you even do have a couple of reference cards, take note, board and dice, where all the symbology is explained for you on a nice handy asset reference. That's not to say that anybody can pick up this game. If you are new to roll and writes, or if this is a little bit outside your wheelhouse in terms of complexity, you're going to be lost quite easily. However, they do have a solution for this, and I gotta give props to Fantasy Flight. More publishers need to do this stat. This is a play-as-you-learn book. So I used this when I was learning the game myself, and I actually recommend that every multiplayer game uses this book for their first game. My friend, on the other hand, disagrees. And yeah, we paid the price for that. But this play-as-you-learn book's really good. It takes you through the setup and the first 4 rounds where you choose each sheet in turn, and it explains what's on the sheet, what you can spend things for, and gives you a recommendation of what to do. It then takes to round 5, where it actually gives you your player faction and introduces the rest of the components. So it kind of gives things piecemeal. Now, it's only for the first 5 rounds, and you've still got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but there's 5 rounds. You've still got all of this to get through, so it's not like it walks you through the entire game, and you certainly won't have a clue whether your choices matter or not in your first game, but this allowed me to get used to the rules very quickly. Quick enough that I could jump into the solo mode. I'll talk about that in another video. But yeah, this is a really good guide. You definitely want to use this for your first game, whether it's multiplayer or solo, frankly, or even if you just want to have a dummy run just to learn the rules. But seriously, more publishers should do this. I want to see this more often, please. Now in this, you can choose to do a little bit of everything, but chances are what you'll do is that you will focus on 2 out of the 4 sheets. Although we've had a fair few games lately where by the end of the game, you may have completely ignored one sheet and then you've kind of blitzed the rest. I mean, if things go well for you, you will unlock a ton, if not all of most of these sheets, which can be a little bit of a problem. But it is fun and rewarding to choose a different sheet each round. It requires a lot of decision making and planning. Like, well, if I do this sheet now, I can unlock this, which will then make life easier when I go to the navigation in a minute. And then once I've got that, that will mean I can build myself a war sun over here. Sweet. That unlocks that tech. Great. And chaining these things and having a bit of a plan with the event deck throwing a slight spanner in the works, because you won't necessarily know the exact timing of a war, production, or council event. But it's cool doing it, like crossing off the icons, and much like every other roll and write. I mean, it's not like it brings anything new to the table. It's just the fact that everything kind of links together. Yes, it's 4 separate mini games, but they do interlink. Getting stuff on one sheet helps you with other sheets, and so it is like you want to do everything, but you can't, and that's a very good feeling to have. But we have noticed a few issues with regards to balance with a few of these sheets. Certainly, if you focus a lot on industry, the points that you can gain from getting the bonus dice unlocked and having your commodity trade goods is pretty sickening. I mean, trade goods are a wild resource, so if you can get all of these unlocked, so you're getting 6 trade goods every production phase, that's a bonus 6 resources for every single, production phase you've had in between. So that could be, anywhere between, let's say, 15 to 18 trade goods in a game, and they get you victory points on top of that. Ignore trade goods at your peril. On top of that, unlocking the bonus dice. I've actually found that, one of the best strategies I've seen is simply to start off on industry, get the bonus dice unlocked as quick as you can on the same sheet, and then spam it like crazy. It gets you a lot of rewards, but it also means that you unlock a bunch of techs, you get a bunch of bonus dice for future, and being able to use these symbols on multiple rounds is very powerful. Very powerful indeed. Focusing a lot on warfare doesn't seem to get you very much on its own. Expansion can yield some pretty good rewards though, but mostly rewards to use on other sheets as opposed to actual points. So when it comes to physical point scoring, it seems that navigation and industry, particularly combined, seems to work pretty well. And obviously don't ignore the objectives, you're going to want some points there. Now we're going from a multiplayer perspective here. We'll do solo in another video, but this can go from 2 to 8 players. Remember the line I like to use from Jurassic Park?
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Yeah, that is so true here. 2 players uses an AI variant which kind of acts like a dummy third player, but 2 players tends to go at a reasonable pace. Every time you're adding players though, you're adding more time to the game, and you might think, well hang on a minute, it's simultaneous roll and write, so surely it won't add any time to the game.
Oh my dear doctor, you have been naive.
When you have this kind of setup, the lowest common denominator is how fast your game goes, and obviously the more players you add, the more chance of that happening. Not to mention that this game suffers from the similar problem that Seven Wonders has, where you care a little bit about your 2 neighbours. I don't give a monkey's what everybody else is doing because they don't influence me at all other than the council phase. And even then, that is such a minor thing that happens 3 times in the game. Who cares, frankly? So having more than 3 players just isn't worth it. But on top of that, the fact is, if you've got a couple of those players that are struggling to comprehend the game or not learning the rules very well, they're going to slow the game down a lot. And so you start wanting to play this with 5, 6, 7, 8 players, you are clinically insane. This game will easily take you 2.5 to 3 hours to do with your first game if you try that. Now, I don't deny that if you had, say, 4 or 5 of you that were au fait with the game, like even if you had 6 or 7 of you that all knew the game really well, like the back of your hand, you didn't need to look up any rules, you knew what everything did, and you just got on with it, you could probably get this game done in 90 minutes to 2 hours. But yeah, how often do we get that scenario? You really think you know 6, 7 or 8 of you that are going to learn this game inside and out and remember all the rules and how everything works on a regular basis? That is a pretty niche scenario. And the games I've played where I've had the player counts high have not been much enjoyable because I'm just sitting there waiting for people to hurry up and do their sheet. And I might have had a turn which was nice and simple. It's like 1, 2, 3, and I'll claim that symbol. Right, I'm cool, that's good. And then somebody else has got, well, I'll just draw that, and then that allows me to spend this from that sheet, which then gives me another 3 icons, so I'm going to cross that off, and that gets me a bonus. Oh, I've got that tech, I better use that.
Get on with it.
You find yourself just sat there with quite a lot of downtime for what is meant to be a simultaneous roll and write. So I'm actually put off wanting to play this multiplayer anymore. You could convince me with people who kind of know what they're doing to play this 3-player absolute max. But once you add more players beyond 3, it's entirely pointless. There's just no, what does it matter? You don't influence them, they don't influence you, apart from, like I said, some minor council phases, and we'll get onto that in a bit more detail in a minute. So 2-player is a great game. I mean, the dummy AI is quite easy to run, and 2 of you will go at a pretty quick pace, but 3-player is actually quite a good little sweet spot. 3 actual players, no dummy AI or anything, and you just get on with it. But yeah, this really does feel more like a solo affair, and as I say, I'll give my reasons why in the other video. Now, I mentioned the council phase is a bit of a worry. Yeah, these are pretty, they range from negligible who gives a monkeys to stupidly powerful this hurts. You know, there are some in here that basically cross out entire bits of your sheet that you've already built or achieved. And they're nasty. They can wipe out 8 to 12 points out of your score, boom, like that, without even a care. Now, obviously, you'll try to vote against it, but what if you didn't get a lot of votes this game? What if that wasn't your focus? And also, what if everybody else doesn't care about that? What if they don't want the other bit to happen? You're outnumbered, you have no chance of passing the vote, so you're screwed. The cards come up, you can't do anything about it, and you just lost 8 to 12 points. Because I built 2 War Suns, and you just went, well, we're passing a law that says War Suns don't score any points this game. Lose your 8 points. That's crippling. That's too much. That's too random. The council phase, sadly, is a bit of a dud, and again, doesn't work, especially with lots of players in the game. It's a bit better when there's only, say, 2 or 3 of you or in solo, but yeah, when you've got 6, 7 or 8 players in that council phase, it can get a little bit unbalanced, particularly if 1 or 2 of you has unlocked so many votes that you've pretty much capped out on your vote sheet, and it's like, well, I got 2 votes, I got 5 votes, I got 17. Well, what are you going to do against the person who's got 17? Especially with one faction that lets you pick after you've seen the votes? That's insanely powerful in a council phase. And if you want to talk powerful and slightly unbalanced, oh blimey, get the relics out. The relics are a side deck. Everybody's got 2 planets that they can visit on the navigation board, which gets them a relic. It scores them victory points, but it gives them a stupidly powerful effect that might be able to use multiple times, or it might be a one-off cool thing, but these effects are bonkers powerful. Like, you ignore these, you are in a bad state. These really do propel you forwards. Some of them I actually would claim are slightly unbalanced. We've seen some stupidly powerful ones before, and if you get the one that just suits what you're doing or suits your faction, it's gonna really make a big difference. You want to visit the relic worlds like Stat, more so than Mecatol Rex. Mecatol Rex gets you a few votes and a few victory points, oh great, but the differential between getting there first and getting there, say, 3rd or 4th is not that big a deal, really. And so, sod it, I'll just do it a little bit later. But you want these relics soon, and you definitely want them.
Shut up and take my money!
Now, there certainly are some problems with the multiplayer gameplay, as I've said, but I gotta give praise to the variety in this game. The replay value is pretty high. You can only see 4 sheets here, and you can play symmetrically, but there's 8 varieties for each sheet. So the B side is effectively the, B side is symmetrical and A side is asymmetrical. But there's 8 for each sheet, and you can mix and match to your heart's content. You don't have to have all the 1s and all the 2s. So you can have a different map layout to everybody. You can have like, a slightly different warfare unit with bonuses. You can have much different planets to expand on. You can have a weird looking grid for your industry sheet. Yeah, they're not crazy different, although I would argue the navigation one's pretty different for a lot of them. But it does create a good amount of replay value when you have different combinations of sheets and try to think, well, if I go for that and that links quite well, that synergizes nicely, so I can get that for this game. Also, my favorite bit though, this is the alien deck, your faction deck. I didn't even realize there were this many aliens in Twilight Imperium. This is ridiculous.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey.
Does Twilight Imperium 4 have this many aliens? Because I'm not sure it does. But you basically have one of these and it'll be yours for the game. It has an ability or setup that you get for the whole game, and it has an ability that triggers when you unlock a certain icon. But there's loads! I've lost track of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20, 24 different factions with a little backstory to get you immersed in the lore. But this is a roll and write, so theme kind of be damned. I mean, it sort of works in some respects, like going across the world, you get the planets which unlock and allow you to expand on the planet. So some of it is thematically accurate, but much like Hadrian's Wall, you really don't get immersed in the theme that much. It's a roll and write where you're crossing off symbols and doing weird little mini games. It's only going to be as thematic as you can get. Although I would argue that this actually has more theme than Hadrian's Wall, because I barely remember what you're doing in that one, and at the end of the day, space beats building a wall, frankly, in my books. But the idea that you're like putting units out and it's fighting your neighbors kind of works. The fact that you're going across the galaxy, finding planets, which then allows you to expand on said planets works. If anything, the main thing that doesn't quite work and is purely mechanical is the way the industry works, because that is solely just a mini game. But as I say, still a pretty fun mini game to do. But these alien factions really do change your playstyle quite well. So 8 versions of every sheet and 24 aliens? You got yourself quite a decent amount of variety in this game, and that's no small feat. So there's a lot of good stuff to say about Twilight Inscription. Now, obviously, the easy bit to get out of the way is that no, this does not replace Twilight Imperium. You're fine. This does not kill your baby. It's a separate deal. Yes, it uses the same artwork and the same factions and that, but no, this does not give me the feeling of an epic 4X game. Okay, it's a standalone spin-off. But there's a lot of good stuff I enjoy in this. I like how these sheets interact and link together, but I enjoy the mini games on them. I like the production quality. I love these dry erase sheets. I love all the color just staring me at the face, even if it does burn my retinas a little bit. But I love that they've taken care with the Play As You Learn book. I think more people need to do this. I'm surprised by how relatively straightforward it is to get into the main rules of the game. It's just a case of really getting to grips with what all the icons do. And once you have, it's not a difficult one to come back to either. The variety is also really good with all those alien factions and the different asymmetrical boards. That's all really good. But what does hold this back quite a bit, though, is the fact that after 3 players, the player count is completely pointless. It's not a short game. I wish it was a bit shorter than like 90 minutes to 2 hours. I mean, 90 minutes if you're lucky. You're really talking a 2-hour affair here, and it's like, that's quite long for a roll and write. But the balance issues with some of these relics, with some of the like Path to Victory, they've been showing up a bit in games, and I'm worried that it's going to mar stuff in the future. But all in all, certainly not bad. I was expecting this to be kind of like, oh my god, a waste of space, and I've actually enjoyed this more than I thought, subject to that proviso. We'll get into the solo mode in a minute, but I'm going to give this one a respectable 7 out of 10. I think it's good. I endorse this one, and I think it's one of the better roll and writes I've played. but it certainly does have some issues. It's not perfect. It's certainly a long affair and a more complex one. So it's certainly not for everybody. If you are new to the genre, or if this scares you, if this intimidates you, you might want to stay away from this. But if you're intrigued, you'd be surprised how easily you can get stuck in, and you'll have a decent time doing it, and a lot of different ways to try it. I mean, I've got a lot of these alien factions to get through, and that's going to take me some time. So yeah, 7 out of 10. Pretty solid endorsement for Twilight Inscription. So that's it for this video. By all means, check out the solo video that I will bolt onto this, where I'll talk about how that one fares when it's just little old me playing the game. But of course, let me know your thoughts. Did you enjoy the video? Then please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you think of the Twilight Imperium franchise as a whole, what you think of this. Does this appeal to you? Do you think this is going too far with the roll and write genre? Let me know your thoughts. Am I burning out your retinas by giving you all these color sheets in your face? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, you can check out more content on the channel, including my top 100 and my other reviews and previews that I've been doing. Don't forget to subscribe to the Patreon if you can. Every little bit helps me to get more review copies to make more content for you. It's all appreciated. But for now, I'll say goodbye. And remember, as always, regardless of which sheet you do, or whether you prefer big 4X or roll and write, it's still only a game. Bye for now.